looked at this, reviewed all of this after it was presented to the board. Judon Boney, former council member, indicated that he did not want to participate. I mean, that he did not want to be a part, agree to the change. That was after the fact. Previously said yes, then he said no. And then there was a question in reference to someone who died, left a power of attorney, but a power of attorney, of course, ceases when that person ceases, when the person dies. And then there was a will, but the will hadn't been probated. Okay. And so primarily for those two reasons, I'm going to ask this matter to come back. There will not be an ordinance that will be coming before you anytime soon. Okay?
No, I'm always troubled when there's discord between my constituents, as I affectionately refer to them as my son and my daughter. And I initially met with all parties to try to build consensus, but this didn't happen. And a community has the right to apply for a historic designation to preserve the historic character of their neighborhood, but also there is a side of the community, and they have the right to oppose it and be concerned about it being a tool of gentrification that could slowly creep through the community one designation at a time.
Information that you all shared really did shed a light for those who do not live in that area on what the dynamics were and how you felt. As a child of a mother who has been at TSU for over 40 years, I kind of grew up in the Third Ward area. And I'm very much possessive of the word Third Ward, just like I'm very possessive of Fourth Ward, being that my church was at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church. And now what Fourth Ward once was is now Midtown. And a lot of people don't understand that Fourth Ward was Midtown. And so when we think about these historic preservation districts and we are trying to preserve history, you know, we keep talking about the folks of Third Ward, but nowhere in that title of the preservation district was Third Ward.
But I want to be very clear. There was nothing in this historic district that was going to be subdividing or working against Third Ward. One of the reasons why we're at this point is there's a lot of misinformation. But there's nothing in this historic district that was going to be working against Third Ward.
I think you're losing my...
No, council member.
I'm speaking on the name.
My time. We're not moving forward on this matter. Let me say that one more time. How many times y'all going?
I think it's important. What's happening here today is a recognition of property rights, that individuals have a right to their property, and that government really should be very careful about restricting or reducing individual property rights in Houston and in Texas. And I'm all for historical preservation, but it needs to be with the consent of all of the owners there. So I'm happy to see the mayor has decided to pull this item and not present it for a vote, because I think that would be very contentious. But I would just remind everybody that historical preservation is really nice and everything, but you must get consent before you restrict the rights of individual property owners to deal with their property in whatever way they see fit. So thank you, Mayor, for doing this today.
Thank you, Councilmember Knox. And we had a lot of answers as well. Thank you.
I'm disappointed at this outcome, but that's water under the bridge. Everybody I know wants to preserve my neighborhood. I particularly want to prevent it from becoming the museum district. So we have already taken advantage of minimum lot size and minimum building line. And I want to let my neighbors know that my skills as an engineer are available to anyone who has any practical proposal for improving the chances that we will retain our current arrangement.
My name is Matt Festa. I'm a professor at South Texas College of Law, where I teach land use and property rights. And the one point that I want to make today is that these historic districts are also subject to the state zoning law. So it's not just the city's own ordinances at stake, it's state law as well. And just a few of those things include notice to the homeowners, an impact statement of the effect of a historic district. And I think some of the residents of Riverside might have been surprised to realize that they might be subject to almost 200 pages of design guidelines. That would be a thing that ought to be in an impact statement. Also, the right to withdraw consent at any time, as has been discussed earlier, and any property owner that doesn't want to be included in a historic district can only be included with a 75% vote of this council. Right, so those are some things that that also apply. The state laws, the Supreme Court held that these zoning rules do apply to historic preservation, and I just commend the council to make sure that those are complied with.
Houston City adopted a code reflecting the interests that the city has in historic preservation. The application to approve the historic designation for one block out of the 3rd Ward, one block, was set out. The neighbors on the block agreed for the most part. You heard from Ms. Smith. She does not agree. You heard from Jack May. He agrees. All of these other people don't live in the area that this proposed historic district covers.
Today is a good day. As a resident of Riverside Terrace and a board member, I just want to thank you all, and I want to thank the mayor for recognizing the failures of the application. We as a community, we worked tirelessly. We really, really did. And I'm very proud of Riverside Terrace. I'm proud of the community. I'm proud of the board. We achieved a lot today, and I think we should pat ourselves on the back. We know we have a struggle ahead of us. We are pivoting quickly to get our deed restrictions in place.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for what came about this morning. Thank you so much for yesterday. I appreciate you. Ain't no way in the world I would have stayed there this long, but some comments was made, and I got to say something. First off, I thank you again. I appreciate where we are. But the ordinance that the city of Houston has should be applied fairly across the city. It shouldn't matter if you live in the 4th Ward, 6th Ward, 4, the bottoms, or whatever. The ordinance should be applied fairly. I want to thank you so much, Councilmember Plummer, for coming to our aid and helping us in this matter. And I want to thank every council member who visited with the members of the board. I wasn't coming because I already know all y'all, but they want to come and visit with you all and talk to you all. So Sally Alcorn, Martin, who's not here, and Knox, and any of you out of visit, I thank you so much for that. Carolyn, I thank you for whatever you were doing.
Two things that caused me a great deal of concern, besides the 7 violations that I found with carrying out the ordinance. And one is that, we are all afforded by the Constitution our Fifth Amendment rights, and which protects our right to private property. And it goes on to state specifically that a person may not be deprived of property by the government without due process of law and fair procedures. All right, and that is the crux of the issue here today. So whether you consider historic districts good or you consider them bad, it's uncontroverted that the preservation ordinance here deprives the property owners of free will to develop, control, and remodel their own properties. It's uncontroverted. So therefore, they are afforded due process of law, and they should be afforded fair process, fair procedures. That did not occur here. And time after time, they were faced with changing rules, directors that were operating outside the ordinance and state laws that was put in place to protect citizens so that they are not blindsided, so that their property rights are not deprived without their knowledge and consent. And over this occurred. So even if you leave the ordinance in place, because there are protections built into the current ordinance. And if you look to state law, which does apply here as well, there are additional protections that the state legislature put into place, specifically when it comes to notice. The city planning department has a site to 33.0 blah blah blah. That's the only notice where the state law specifically says you must list out. And
Your time has expired.
sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Evans Shabazz.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Miles, did you complete your thought?
Could I just complete it just
Okay, thank you.
briefly? So I just encourage you that as you move forward, that you not only, as the council member Shabazz indicated, look at the ordinance, but look at the process. Look at the fair notice, because it did not occur here today, and that means every property owner in the city of Houston is subject to the same treatment and the same unfair process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker.